All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's Jay again, and I'm going to be redoing my garden this year, so I wanted to go over some of the changes that I'm going to be making this year over last year. Now, last year was really successful. I had a lot of vegetables out of this garden, or a lot of fruit, I should say. I did a little video on all the tomatoes that I got out of just this little section of my yard, and I wanted to redo it this year to see if I could get even more production and just change a few things that were a fail last year, because I think you should always be improving things that you've seen not quite work right, and you want to redo those things. So a couple of the plants are kind of leftovers from last year, and I'll kind of go over the changes that I've made this year, which I think will make this a lot more successful. So I don't know if you guys remember, but I've done what's called a sunken bed garden instead of a raised bed garden. And I think a sunken bed garden is a little bit more appropriate for here in Arizona because the heat. A raised bed garden, it just gets too hot and it dries out too quickly, especially if it's in the full sun. So, and vegetables, they need the full sun, so it's going to be kind of in the full sun. And it's going to be kind of sitting out there cooking. So I decided to do it in ground because everything works so much better in the ground than above the ground. So I want to go over this technique and see if you guys like it or what your thoughts are. So it's already sunk, and I've got it kind of leveled on terraces. And a couple, these are leftovers, like I said. The artichoke, they just look really nice. These are just starting to get going, so I'm going to leave these guys. There's 4 here. And then, of course, the silk floss tree is right here in the middle. You can see it with all its points, and it kind of shades this stuff in the afternoon a little bit. So if we come out here, you can maybe see the size and shape a little bit better. See if I'll get in here in a minute. But you see I've got kind of terraces still. So even though this may look like it's level, you'll be able to tell really here in a minute that it's not. So there's steps to this. So you see the back here is level with the ground where this concrete curb is. And you see I've got the garden all curbed in. There's concrete here, concrete back here, all along the front, which these pots are sitting on, and then all along the front here. So it's encased in concrete, and it's out here pretty much in the full sun. Like I said, you need that for vegetables. Now, these boards here are 12 inches wide. So that much is what is buried underneath the ground. You can see about 2 inches above the ground on this one. And on this one, you can see the whole board for now right here. I'll kind of go over this in a minute, but you see this is 12 inches. So what I did was I put a board in there, a board in here. We dug this out to probably, I don't know, maybe 3 feet deep. Dug this whole pit out 3 feet deep, and then I poured my garden soil in here. So this is completely full of that soil, right? Down to here, and a little bit deeper on this one. So that now the roots can have that much more of that nice soil to grow through before it hits the native soil, which I think is good too, because that's where a lot of the water holding capacity is over a raised bed, which would be just what this would be if this was sitting on the ground, and you lose a lot of the water out of the bottom if it's a raised bed. But in the sunken bed, it retains all that water. It sinks down through your good soil mix and then down into the clay, and then eventually the earthworms and everything kind of till the two together, so you've got maximum drainage now and nutrients and minerals. And I do think a little bit of the native clay is good, especially for that water holding capacity, because this stuff dries out so quickly in the summertime. Now, this is quite a large area, so did it take a lot of soil? Yeah, it took a lot of soil, but this is kind of like a one-time deal, and then you're just going to be adding a little bit to it each time, because you're never going to till this again. This will be a no-till garden, and this worked really good last year. And last year this was only, what, maybe 4 inches deep, of the good soil, and we must have got 1,000 tomatoes out of just this patch. So I did a video on that if you want to look back on that. So having good soil, and I'll kind of go over the water too on how these are going to get irrigated, and they get a lot of water, including all the rainwater from the hardscape, which I'll kind of go over that too. So they have their own irrigation. Let me see if I can get down in here. Which are these sprinkler heads here. So these sprinkler heads spray. This one sprays half of this garden, and that one over there sprays half of this garden. So the whole thing gets wet. And that comes on every other day is what I'm going to do it. So I'm going to do it time for every other day. I think that'll be plenty of water for these guys, especially once they get down in there, because as you can see, even by last year's peppers, I mean, these things still look really good from last year's experiment. So, I mean, look at all these peppers. And just, they're big too. So this was last year's with just the 4 inches and the water system spraying all over them, which I thought would, you know, rot them and kill them and rot the fruit and mildew them and get all kinds of fungus out here. But it didn't, because I just let everything kind of go wild. Like, I didn't stake the tomatoes. I just let them kind of just flow all over the place. Same with the peppers. I've only recently staked them, but these things have just so many peppers on them, they just fall all over, and even in the winter time, which is very surprising. So these will be putting on new peppers soon. And then I've got a peach here that I just put here to give it a little bit of afternoon shade, so I can maybe keep the tomatoes a little bit longer. Then back here, I think I'm going to do some more peppers and some more tomatoes. I had some old potatoes back here, and I actually kind of was digging around in these because I wanted to see what was down in here. And I mean, there's potatoes. It's kind of neat, like seeing these grow. And by having this loose soil medium, you can just dig them right up. There's all kinds of little cool potatoes. I mean, look. It's so funny how they grow too on these little runners, but I mean, there's some decent potatoes in here. It's a pretty good sized one. And by having this loose soil, I can just pull these right up and out. So I'm just gonna yank on these and see what else is down in here. Wow, there's one. That is so cool. Wow. There's actually more than I thought would be in here. Because I bet you every one of these plants, oh man, every one of these plants has to have potatoes. Oh wow, yeah, okay. So I'm gonna replant some of these because that's pretty neat. These grew all year out here. The little green. But this whole patch, or this whole area, is filled with potatoes. That is really neat. Wow. There's another one, a bunch of little fryer potatoes. All right, well, I'm gonna really dig this up later and see what all, wow, there's a whole bunch over here. Oh wow, look at this. Oh wow. Oh, that is so cool. All right, so I didn't expect to actually do a video on a potato harvest, but Wow, this is pretty neat. That is a lot of potatoes in there. All right, well, the plants looked really sad. Let's just put it that way. The plants never really looked that great, so I didn't really care too much about them. I was more focused on the tomatoes than these, but now that I see, look at that, this is like gold nuggets. This is like gardener's gold. Like, this makes me just as happy as those videos that I watch where the guys are out there panning for gold or looking for it and they find one giant nugget. Wow. Oh man, that's neat. There's a big one. All right, well, now I'm more into potatoes, and I'm gonna plant a bunch of purple ones in here now because I see that the soil is just so loose and awesome from just the 1 year that I can just rummage around down in here all the way back down to, what the heck? Is that a sweet potato? What the heck? Okay. If that's a sweet potato or a yam, I'm not exactly sure how that got in there. Let's set him over to the side. Let's keep going and see what else is down in here. But I can dig all the way down to the clay. So there it is right there. There's the clay layer that I was telling you about. So yeah, it's about 4 inches thick that I poured on of my garden soil, the potting soil, and man, it worked. There's a lot more too, because there's a bunch of plants that are below me right here, and you can see the plants, like I said, never really looked that awesome. But I guess I can use these little potatoes for seeds maybe. But yeah, look, you just pull up, yank, and there's just little potatoes out here. All right, well, ooh, and there's another one of those. This looks like a radish. Okay, well, anyway, I think that'll be the end of this video because I'm going to take the time now to kind of go through this area a little bit better and see what is in here because, wow, that's over here in the clay too. It's right there on the edge. It's like gold nuggets. Wow. All right, guys, so sorry this video is a little longer than it was supposed to be. And actually, I'm going to get back to one more point real quick if I can. Look at that. Isn't that neat? Okay. One thing that I added that was different also was the drain. So all this hardscaping out here floods when it rains. I've got a pretty large area back here that's hardscaped. And so what I did was I ended up funneling it down into this garden, this area, this drain. So you see the drain here, and I put a pipe here underneath the curbing so it collects all the water, and from the runoff from the pots too when I water the pots, and from the rain. It collects all that, and it goes back down into the garden. You can see how it's pretty, I got this area pretty deep until I put another plant here. I'll probably put some sugarcane right here to get all the extra water too. Not quite sure. Some water-loving plant. Then, I tested this yesterday when it rained. It kind of flooded the whole area, and this filled up quite deep, full of water, and I was like, all right, let's see if that stands, and it didn't. So all that water that collected in this front area, which is a massive amount, I know you can't see it really, but it is, and it forced all that water into the landscape and down underneath all of these beds also. So every time it rains and every time I water the plants in pots, all that runoff will now go to the plants in the garden. And I feed with fish emulsion, so that will be going kind of naturally back down into here, and I won't have any fertilizers from the pots leaching out into anything. It's just going to be fish, which will now just help out this area back here. And no, I don't have any raccoons or rodents that I'm worried about digging up the garden. So if you did, you obviously couldn't do all that. But I just wanted to go over this and the changes I made, the update, and I'll update this later in the year once this starts going, because I think it's really going to work. I think it's going to really kick butt this year, and it did last year too. The soil is even a little bit better, older. I'm just adding to it, more or less just pouring more on top. And we'll see how it goes this year, and I think it's going to be really smashing gardens. So yeah, I don't do a lot of vegetables, guys. I know even the vegetables that I grow are quote fruits, probably, you know, for the most part. But I just kind of want to go over this and see if you guys want to try this on your own. And this seems to work really good as a garden, and it looks great, and it collects water for you. You can kind of use this as a water harvesting pit, kind of right in the middle of your yard if you wanted to. All right, guys, I think that's about it. Thank you for watching.